For today, we're talking about things to consider when you're buying your first camera. And these are things that I wish I knew back when I was first starting photography. Now this applies whether you're getting a camera to capture your own personal memories, or to start out a new hobby, or to eventually become a professional photographer. The first thing I wish I knew when I was starting was I wish I knew about used gear. Used gear from a reputable camera store can save you a lot of money. Look, the truth is, a lot of professional photographers that are always upgrading their gear when new gear comes out, they're often selling their old gear so that they can afford those things. And you can pick up really good used gear that is usually hand-me-downs from these professional photographers, and they take great care of their stuff. But on top of that, when you get it from a good reputable store such as B&H, Adorama, or my personal favorite, KEH, they do the extra step to do the extra cleaning, and they give you a great, aside from a great deal, they do a great job of handling that equipment so that it comes to you at the condition as promised. And the other thing I love about these places is they often will have some sort of grading system that perfectly describes the condition of the used gear, so you know what you're getting. Now, I'm not sponsored by KEH. They're just a personal favorite of mine. I've been using KEH for a little over a year now, and I've been getting a lot of my film gear from KEH. Now, on top of all that, many of these reputable companies have some sort of 30-day guarantee or 30-day warranty where you can receive the item, use it, and if it's not as promised, you can usually return it and get your money back or some other value. I'm happy to say that with KEH, I've never had this issue. The other thing I wish I knew was to ditch the kit lens. I would highly recommend just buying the body only and then figuring out what kind of photography you want to do and get a good lens that can get you started with that. The kit lenses often suck. They're designed to get you starting shooting, but the problem is they're not a good lens for really anything in particular. They have what's called a variable aperture, which means the farther you zoom, the less effective that aperture is going to be. So you'll start on the wide end at something like a 3.5, and on the long end at a 5.6, which is horrible for low light. You're better off getting just the body, and in many cases, not all, but in many cases, I would probably recommend picking up a Nifty 50. A Nifty 50 is a 50 millimeter lens. Often, most of them are at like 1.8 aperture. And these are fixed lenses, which means if you want to zoom, you actually have to get up and use your feet and zoom in, or zoom out with your feet. Again, in most cases, I would recommend a Nifty 50. It's good to have anyway. It's so versatile. And most of the time, in my experience, when people come to me and they want to start photography, they're usually showing me pictures of these super sharp images of people with a nice blurry background. A lot of people are under the assumption that that's the camera, when in fact that's the lens. What you need for that is a larger aperture, so you can allow more light and a shallower depth of field. So the next thing I wish I knew is that you're buying into a camera ecosystem. And what I mean by that is, for example, here I have a Nikon ZF, and over here I have the Canon R6. These are both mirrorless cameras. Now, the Z lens, the Nikon ZF uses Nikon Z lenses and fit only with mirrorless Nikon Z style lenses. The RF uses RF lenses and fit only the RF system. So, I cannot put this lens on this camera, and vice versa. I cannot put this lens on this camera. Here I have a 20 millimeter, and here I have a 24 to 105. Zoom. Now, if I wanted to use the 24 to 105, I have to use the camera that can adapt to the 105, the 24 to 105. If I want to use the 20 millimeter, I have to use the camera designated for the 20 millimeter, and that is designated by the mount on the lenses, on the cameras. So when you purchase a camera, you're dedicating to those mounts. If you're getting a DSLR, the Nikon brand has the F and the Canon brand has the EF right now. You can put old F mount lenses on the Z, on the new Zs, and you can put old EF lenses on the new RF lenses, but you can't go backwards. You cannot put the Z on the F, and you can't put the RF on the EF. So that's something to know. So if you want to think about the future, when you might want to upgrade your cameras, these are currently the new systems, the mirrorless systems. The old systems, which you can probably find at a really good price, are the DSLR systems, which you will be, again, dealing with either the F system on the Nikon or the EF on the Canon. And then Sony also has their own brand. They're doing really good. And they've had their mount for several years. So again, if I have this 70 to 200 millimeter f2.8, this is an RF lens. I cannot put that on my Nikon ZF. And if I want to put the old f-mount lenses on the Z, I'm going to need a special adapter for that. Same goes for the EF glasses on the RF systems. Something to also know about that. Now, for these reasons, many photographers will just stick to one brand, and that's okay. Other photographers, they like to shoot around. Picking up your first camera, you're more than likely just going to stick with one brand and one type of mount. The good news about the older DSLRs is they are open to the third-party systems for third-party lenses, and there's some really good ones, namely Sigma and Tamron. So they make glass. Excuse me. They make lenses. We call them glass. For those systems that work really well at a much cheaper price. Typically, though, I will say many photographers will try and stick to their specific brand so that those electronics work with that specific camera a whole lot faster and better than the third-party ones. But the savings on the third-party is absolutely justifiable. The last thing to know that I wish I knew back when I started is gear doesn't make the photographer. The biggest thing you need to do is learn the basics of photography, and that's learning the exposure triangle, that's your ISO, your aperture, and your shutter speed. Alright, and then you also need to learn about the rule of thirds and different types of composition. These are the things that will actually make you a great photographer and will help you build your photography portfolio and experiences, and make for more enjoyable experiences doing your photography. Again, whether it's a hobby or just taking pictures of your loved ones. So the big thing to consider when you're buying your first camera is, what are you going to shoot? I'm not going to recommend a 50mm 1.8 to someone who wants to do birding. If you want to do birding, you're going to want a much longer lens and a much longer reach. So I would recommend a system that can get you started doing that. But if you're just going to go casually shoot, maybe you have a newborn coming in on the way, you don't need a long zoom. That's where I would probably recommend starting out with a nifty 50. But again, before you go trying to see what's new, set yourself a budget, look into the used market, and figure out what lens is probably going to suit you best to get started. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, do me a favor, please hit like, subscribe. I'm hoping to do some more videos of this on a more regular basis. Thank you for watching.